the Swedes ask themselves,
is this the return of the ghost rockets?
close encounters of the beautiful kind.
I was literally bending my neck, looking up at it. My jaw just dropped.
Who or what are the Nordics?
Aren't aliens supposed to be green, bug-eyed monsters from outer space? Well, not always.
And is this evidence of murder by aliens?
These incisions were symmetrical, and the muscle tissue had somehow been sucked right out.
Is this medical experimentation, genetic experimentation? Is it for food?
UFOs, once the stuff of fantasy, now caught on camera, finally forcing governments to reveal what they know.
UAPs are unexplained, but they are real.
Many of these phenomena have been cited in training ranges. We're very much concerned about safety of flight.
So let's just speculate for one moment that these things, whatever they are here to do not very good things.
Impossible engineering, terrifying encounters, sinister cover-ups. This is evidence of the unexplained. January 2022. Alarm bells sound at one of Sweden's 3 nuclear power stations.
A security guard reports the appearance of a strange flying object in the air over Forsmark. The Swedish police respond immediately.
A police spokesperson, Petra Blomqvist, confirms that police officers on the ground and in a police helicopter can verify the account.
She says they're observing an unidentified aircraft operating.
Shortly after being spotted by police, the UAP moves eastwards until it disappears over the island of Grasa.
But this is just the beginning. A further craft appears over another of the country's nuclear power stations.
A local man named Daniel Pettersson is driving south from Gothenburg near the Ringhals nuclear with him in the car.
The Pettersson family spots a bright light in the sky, which seems to be growing stronger. They document the encounter with Daniel's phone and report it to the police.
They scout around, but they don't see anything.
The police launch a nationally coordinated investigation into the mysterious incidents, and later, Sweden's National Security Service, SAPO, takes over.
Sweden's 3 nuclear power plants provide 30% of the country's energy. If anything happened to even one of them, the country would be thrown into chaos. But then the UFOs start appearing over the country's other strategic sites.
Other reports include Kiruna and Luleå airports, the Royal Palace in Stockholm, and Oskarshamn, and Barsebäck nuclear power plants.
Whatever these objects in the sky were, it seems some of them were of considerable size. Swedish media reported that some of the UAPs were large enough to withstand.
Is Sweden under attack from some sort of unearthly force? Enormous objects menacing Sweden. A population cries out for answers. The older generation here remember that this has happened before.
The last time Sweden experienced such intense this was before the term UFO was even coined. Before the Kenneth Arnold sighting that started it all. Before Roswell.
The Swedes call UFOs spökraketer, or ghost rockets.
Just 1 year before flying saucer mania arrived in America, Sweden was hit by a terrifying wave of its own. The word UFO hadn't been invented, so the Swedes coined their own name for these weird metallic objects that suddenly appeared in their skies.
The ghost rockets were a series of sightings of unidentified aerial objects, more than 2,000 at the end of just 1 year.
The interesting thing about the ghost rockets, then and now, is that Swedish scientists noted they didn't behave like normal projectiles.
They had maneuverability and they had control, And that's something we're still seeing now.
The similarities between then and now are compelling. The sightings most often consisted of fast-flying rocket or missiles visible for mere seconds.
And just as with American UFOs, there were tantalizing stories of crashes.
In the case of the ghost rocket, many reports were made of things crashing, often into lakes. The best known of these crashes occurred on July 19th in 1946 in Norrland, Sweden.
What witnesses described as a rocket-shaped object, grey with wings, crashing into a lake with a mighty thunderclap.
In 1946, the Swedish military tried to track and recover the debris. They made a number of dives at the wreck sites. Just like before, they found neither a flying object nor the remains of one. But sometimes they did find craters, as if there had been something there. Right after the investigation, the Swedish Air Force officer leading the search, Carl Gösta Bartol, submits a report. He states that there was a disturbance at the bottom of the lake, that even though nothing was recovered, there was clear evidence that the object had disintegrated. Bartol continued to speak about the event. Nearly 40 years later, in 1984, he told researcher Klaus Svahn that there had been an object, that it had disintegrated, perhaps even in flight. And he insisted that what people saw throughout the ghost rocket phenomenon were real physical objects, and many remain unexplained.
On October the 10th, 1946, Swedish defense staff said publicly that some was and clear and couldn't be explained as Swedish aircraft or natural phenomena. People were terrified and pressure mounted on the Swedish government to do something.
Given the political climate of the time, there was also another explanation which could have potentially given the Swedish government an easy way out.
The government told the people that it could simply be a Russian takeover of the V-2 missile sites at Peenemünde, Germany, testing early cruise missiles.
This was a great explanation from a military perspective because it didn't require confirmation and it was the sort of information that would naturally not be public anyway. But privately, they weren't so sure.
A document released 50 years later in 1997 shows US military advisors in the region were sure that these were not any known craft from Earth.
Suddenly, the official story starts to look shaky. The debris, which was reportedly natural, was attributed to meteor showers. But observations did not match any or meteorites.
And the theory that these might be coming from Peenemünde, well, that was investigated as well.
Apparently, that investigation was also left wanting. It seems that many in the Swedish military believed what the US seemed to believe.
75 years later, the Swedish government again finds itself having to reassure its terrified public. And today, as in the 1940s, the authority source of these intruders is once again Russia.
In February this year, a Russian man was arrested for flying a drone over the Swedish royal palace.
The drone incursions also follow an announcement by Sweden's Lieutenant General Michael Claesson, Chief of Joint Operations for the Swedish Armed Forces, that the nation would be bolstering its visible military presence on the island of Gotland, in landing craft passing through the Baltic Sea.
And the reports of new UFO encounters coincides with weird activity on the internet.
The recent spate of sightings at Swedish nuclear power plants has been accompanied by a rather bizarre TikTok campaign.
This campaign is rumored to be backed by Moscow, and war is coming. It's really creepy, and actually it's really quite cruel.
Vladimir Putin's government has threatened to invade Sweden in the past. But as authorities investigate more closely, the connection to Russia seems a little less conclusive.
On the 4th of February 2022, prosecutor Hans Ehrman stated there was no evidence that foreign powers were behind the drones at Forsmark, Oskarshamn and the Ringhouse. He said it was unclear what was actually observed.
Just as in the 1940s, Sweden seems to be targeted, by an unknowable enemy.
The fact it's such a concern for the military speaks volumes too.
Whether it's Russia, or someone, or something else, it remains a mystery.
Most so-called UFO footage is tiny and indistinct, or clearly fake. Not this video.
In February 2022, UAP footage of a classic flying saucer shape appearing in shows up on a popular U.S. message form.
The disc-shaped object appears to be at least 50 feet in diameter and dances dangerously close to the wing of a plane in flight.
The footage, which is now known as the flyby footage, was evidently shot by an individual on an airplane, but we don't know who this individual is.
It's not known where this mysterious video was shot, but the craft bears a striking resemblance to a similar object photographed over Costa Rica in 1971. If it's real, this new UFO footage is some of the most incredible ever shot. And suspiciously, it emerges just like a congressional hearing into UFOs in 50 years, which occurred in May 2022.
Was the government aware of the footage prior to its appearance online? And if so, is there more footage that they're just not showing us?
Is the U.S. government concealing crucial UFO footage?
At the hearing, Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, Scott Gray, did produce film of an unidentified flying object.
Let me share with you the first video that we have here today, which shows an observation in real time.
It was an historic moment, as this never-before-seen footage of a UFO was streamed live to the world from the U.S. Congress UFO hearing in Washington, D.C. The watching world held its breath. Would this be the smoking gun, definitive proof of UFOs?
There it was. In many cases, that's all that a report may include.
Pinpointing this airborne intruder on the video proved difficult.
We were shown footage of an object zooming past a military jet plane, but it just goes by so fast, it's blink and you miss it.
Explain what we should be looking at.
Absolutely.
Is that it right there?
It looks reflective in this video, somewhat reflective, and in the cockpit of the aircraft.
And that's the object we're looking at right there now, right?
That's it right there.
Okay.
Why would they go to such lengths to show us such underwhelming clips, especially when we know that there are better clips out there on YouTube?
One argument is that they were showing just enough to shut everyone up.
They're just giving us a crumb when there's a whole cake that they're hiding.
There are strong indications the government has much better footage that it's keeping under wraps. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence released its preliminary assessment on unidentified aerial phenomena in June 2021. It acknowledged the existence of UFOs, but revealed little else of substance. But then, University professor Bob Maguire came forward. Maguire was formerly at the top military think tank in the USA, the Institute for Defense Analysis. He claimed what the public was shown doesn't scratch the surface.
The professor said that some members of Congress were reportedly shown 70 pages of classified material. He said, quote, they got to see the good stuff.
He also claimed to know several people who were on the behind closed doors meeting of the National Security Council, and he said that they had been shown 14 classified clips of UAPs.
Some of the unseen footage is less than 50 feet.
Could the U.S. government really be sitting on material so explosive that it can't be revealed to the public?
Many photographs and videos have emerged of UFOs that seem extraordinarily clear and detailed. But without a clear chain of custody or supporting radar or scanner data, it's impossible to tell if they're real or fake. So could this mysterious close-up clip, which appeared on the internet just before the hearing, be one of the 14 shown to senators.
It appeared online a few weeks before the May 17th briefing. Now, I'm not saying that there's a connection between the timing, but it certainly seems interesting.
Most of the UFOs or UAPs caught on camera appear a significant distance from wherever the video is being shot. But this one appears so close you can almost reach out and touch it.
Or could it be a fake? Since the footage first appeared online, it has been hotly contested. Definitely, some skeptics claim that it is too good to be true.
You have to wonder what's really going on here. One of the clues that all is not as it seems is the muttering that you can hear of other people on the plane.
If you compare this reaction to those of the USS Nimitz pilots when they encountered a tic-tac-shaped object from their cockpit window, it's very different. The pilots went berserk. However, some ufologists suspect the audio track has been deliberately muted to avoid identifying the pilot who leaked the footage. Whether or not this incredibly close encounter is real or fake, former counterintelligence special agent Lou Elizondo believes there are at least 100 UAP incidents that warrant further investigation.
I am a man of national security. I always have been. The same type of skill sets I use to hunt terrorists and spies are precisely the same skill sets I use to hunt UFOs. We have something in our skies, we don't know what it is, we don't know how it works, we don't know where it's from, we don't know its full capabilities. And by the way, we're seeing it over controlled US airspace, and no one wants to say anything. Everyone wants to pretend like it's not real. I took an oath very early on to serve my fellow citizens and to defend this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And at the end of the day, bureaucracy.
Why isn't the government reacting more strongly? Could it be that they've seen all this before?
The DoD simply doesn't have an explanation, and it's going to open up a Pandora's box. They don't have the answer. Why admit a problem for which there is no solution for?
We've all seen horror and sci-fi movies with malevolent aliens, but could the truth be even worse?
There have been decades of unexplained mutilations all around the world. But one in 1988, Sao Paulo, Brazil, has left investigators baffled.
A bloodless corpse with its organs removed in Brazil, a bloodless corpse with the same organs removed in New Mexico. And the wounds in different incidents in different parts of the world bear striking similarities to one another. What's going on?
It's been suggested these mutilations are the work of extraterrestrials, that humans are now the lab rats for aliens.
According to reports, there's a young boy walking along the edge of a reservoir when he sees a flock of vultures seeming to feed on something nearby.
After scaring the birds away, he sees the corpse of a middle-aged man on the ground, and it looks as if it's been horrifically mutilated.
Internal organs had been carefully removed, along with his eyelids, part of his jawbone and tongue, his colon. 2 perfectly round holes, about 1.5 inches in diameter, were found on the body's armpits and also 2 on the legs.
These incisions were found to be symmetrical, and the muscle tissue had somehow been sucked right out.
His body was certainly tampered with by someone with extraordinary medical skills. His organs were removed with surgical precision. This was something that was done with intention. It's absolutely gruesome, but the weirdest part was the lack of blood reported in the victim, as if something had just sucked it away.
Encarnacio Zapata Garcia and Dr. Rubens Goes, who first revealed this supposed gruesome death, said they'd been told by local police that they knew of 12 other very similar cases in the same area.
Despite the rumors circulating amongst the locals, nothing was reported in the local newspaper. In fact, the grisly findings of this case might never have come to light if it wasn't for the release of a coroner's report about the incident in 1994.
The coroner's report was accompanied by photos of the mutilated bodies.
Images too horrific to show in full. But hideously mutilated bodies are an all too common occurrence when man inflicts inhumanity on man.
Sao Paulo in the 1980s had a lot of problems with gangs, but the circumstances of this man's death bore very little resemblance to the other kinds of gangland executions that they were seeing at the time. The guy's kidneys, liver, intestines, and pancreas were all reported as missing. Why would any gangland killer go to so much effort to cleanly remove these organs?
But the Brazilian man's wounds do match injuries found on another man, whose horrifically mutilated body was discovered after he was said to have been dragged into a...
One of the most shocking incidences supporting this alien mutilation theory is the 1956 case of US Sergeant Lovett and Major William Cunningham. Both were searching for debris near the White Sands missile testing grounds near the Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico.
Cunningham reports hearing Lovett scream. He runs over and witnesses what is to this day one of the most horrific alien encounter reports known.
Cunningham says that he saw Lovett being dragged along the ground by a long, sort of snake-like arm that's coming out of what looks like a flying saucer.
A circular silver object ground.
Cunningham reported then seeing Lovett being pulled into the craft, which then rose vertically into the sky and disappeared.
I mean, this guy is an Army major. He's trained in observation, and at least on paper, he looks like a credible witness.
According to the reports, base personnel said that at the time of the incident, an unidentified object appeared on the radar.
3 days later, it's reported that Lovett's naked corpse is recovered 10 miles away from the alleged abduction site.
His corpse had been severely mutilated. His tongue had been cut out, his eyes had been removed, his anus and genitalia had been removed.
The most puzzling aspect of this case was the report that the body had been completely drained of blood.
Sound familiar?
The Lovett case report was said to have been filed in a document called the Project Grudge Report 13, in a series of files on UFOs made by the US government.
Guess what, though? The US government denies its existence.
Some UFO researchers say the practice of aliens abducting us, performing experiments, and then dumping the bodies afterwards, and that the government is trying to conceal this.
In the US alone, 600,000 people are reported missing each year. In the UK, it's 170,000. Researcher David Paulides claims to have found a disturbing pattern of hikers, hunters, and campers vanishing without trace in America's remote national parks.
Are at least some of these the result of alien abductions?
If the phenomenon is capable of doing these things to humans, it raises disturbing questions about how they view us.
If aliens have a biology and anatomy similar to us, which is not beyond the realm of the possible, could they be abducting us in order to replace their organs with our own?
Is this medical experimentation, genetic experimentation? Is it for food?
Could they see the Earth as just a giant organ supermarket for them to harvest at will?
September 2020, St. Louis, Missouri. 29-year-old Lily Nova is about to be confronted by what she believes is an alien life form.
I've always been very interested in the universe and space, and found out that you could take photos of the Milky Way and of space.
She was taking photos of the stars when she suddenly saw a craft the likes of which she'd never seen before. It apparently zoomed towards her, hovered for a moment, and then disappeared.
I was literally bending my neck, looking up at it. I could see the shape, I could see the lights on it. It was like a dark gray, metallic, diamond-like shape with a ring of bluish green lights and red lights, like 2 lines of lights going across it. My jaw just dropped.
These encounters continued, and Lily says she soon realized she could communicate with the apparent spacecraft's occupants. But these extraterrestrials were not the bug-eyed caricature of aliens.
I received a telepathic image of a woman in light skin, and she had a skin-tight gray silver uniform on. She was very beautiful. She just looked like maybe like a beautiful model. And then there were about 4 or 5 crew members standing behind her. I couldn't see their faces. And after that, I've been seeing a lot of the Nordic looking ones, the ones with the blonde hair and blue eyes.
The entities Lily claims to have made contact with present as human beings, albeit super attractive versions of us, almost as though they've walked out of a glossy magazine. It'd be easy to dismiss this as a fantasy, but human-looking occupants of UFOs have been reported before.
It's the 21st of October, 1954, Staffordshire, England. Jessie Rostenberg is in her home when she hears a sound. She says it sounds like a giant cauldron of water being poured onto a blazing fire.
It was a very loud,
Jessie's called to her garden by her sons, Anthony and Ronald.
And they were both laid flat on the grass. Mummy, there's a flying saucer, and I said, oh, don't be silly, get up.
Yeah.
And then when I looked up,
there it was.
What Jessie says she sees is what looks like a giant Mexican hat, a flying saucer that hovers above them and their house, and it's about the size of their roof.
She says that she could see the occupants of the craft sitting in the dome and that they were extremely beautiful blonde figures.
They had large foreheads and long golden hair like a page boy or one of the old kings.
well, once you've seen the beauty and the appearance that come through, even from that UFO, to me, the eyes were magnificent. You looked at the eyes, and the eyes compelled you. You can imagine how I felt, terrified inside, yet I was pacified at the same time.
In science fiction books and movies, aliens have typically been presented as fearsome and grotesque.
Aren't aliens supposed to be green, bug-eyed monsters from outer space? Well, not always. In many of the sightings, the extraterrestrials are rather like the Targaryens in Game of Thrones. They're beautiful, blonde creatures with chiseled features.
They've been called Nordics because of their Scandinavian appearance.
The inhabitants of Nordic countries were historically famous for being of tall stature, with deep-set light eyes, thin lips, and straight noses. Most genetic historians believe these features are a unique and random byproduct of various migrations into the area from the Stone Age onwards. But in accounts of close encounters, this Nordic look crops up again and again, even in the testimony from high-ranking military figures. In the 1950s and 60s, Bill Tompkins worked on advanced technology projects for US naval intelligence and served on the Apollo space program. He says his work went beyond the normal world of science and engineering.
He worked on above top-secret projects, including, he claims, those related to extraterrestrial life. Things like reverse engineering extraterrestrial communication systems and UFO technology.
On these programs, Bill says that he was assisted by 3 Nordics, and one of them worked for him as his assistant.
They were nice young ladies. They were smart. They all worked beautiful.
These Nordics had an impact on his work, shaping designs and decisions. And according to Bill, they had a know-how we didn't have, and still don't have.
It may simply have been that the projects Tompkins worked on were top-secret US technology, and those operational on it were told the Nordics were extraterrestrial as part of a bizarre cover story.
It sounds incredible, but these claims are not just restricted to Bill Tompkins. The defense minister in Canada in the 1960s, Paul Hellyer, says that we have a positive working relationship with tall blondes, or Nordics, who visit and live on Earth.
Extraterrestrials have been coming here for thousands of years. They are concerned about what's going on in the world, and they'll pick out a few individuals and visit them or talk to them telepathically or send information to them by channeling. They have a deal that they won't interfere, but I think that there's also a loophole if things get bad enough that they would make exceptions.
According to Hellyer and ufologists, these Nordics came from the Pleiades star cluster. It's a group of hundreds, if not thousands of stars, located in the constellation Taurus, 440 light-years from Earth. The brightest of these stars are visible with the naked eye and have been known for centuries as the Seven Sisters, and legends link them with supernatural beings of unnatural power and beauty.
Strangely, this mythology is pretty ubiquitous across different mythologies, whether it's ancient Greece or Australian Aborigine or Native American. This idea of 7 women from Earth who ascend skywards to become these 7 stars.
Is it really a surprise that so many different cultures over time and across space saw the same thing in this particular constellation in the sky?
Could this be an indication of an ancient visitation from human-looking extraterrestrials?
There are at least 100 billion stars in our galaxy alone. Every one is unique, and so are the planets that spin around them. They have different chemical compositions and different orbits and gravity. The chances of human-like life forms developing on such wildly alien worlds seems implausible. But is it impossible? One concept, first proposed in the 5th century BC in ancient Greece, is the theory now named panspermia. It's the idea that life exists throughout the universe, and rocks, debris, and space dust carry hitchhiking microorganisms from one planet to another.
Some have wondered if life on Earth could have come from Mars. There has, after all, been material interchange between the 2 planets. We've discovered at least 175 Martian meteorites on Earth. Now, we know that in Earth's early development, Mars was habitable. There was life of some description on Mars.
Perhaps life came from elsewhere in the galaxy. Perhaps there's a continuity of life all across the universe. If so, then that would explain why human-looking creatures could have emerged in other civilizations on other planets.
But the specific Nordic look, an atypical human appearance associated with extreme beauty, makes Pentagon UFO investigators suspicious. They entertain the possibility that this Nordic look is a disguise.
In China right now, because pandas are an endangered species, the zookeepers in the Chinese zoos have realized they can cause much less disruption to the pandas' exhibit and their natural habitat and their behavior if they put all their zookeepers in little panda suits. And now to us it seems kind of funny and comical, but it seems to work. By putting a zookeeper that doesn't look like a panda and putting him in a panda suit, it turns out that they can get much closer to the pandas to study them and cause much less disruption. Is it possible that if there's a super technical society out there that people claim looks like you and me that are humans, but could also be some sort of camouflage, right? If you can recognize someone as looking like you and acting like you and talking like you, it's a lot easier to relate and ultimately to communicate.
Perhaps we are zoo animals, and our keepers, whose true appearance would terrify us, take on a benign disguise to put us at our ease. This may be to initiate communication, or to lull us into a false sense of security.
In 2016, a seriously ill man gets a medical payout from the US government.
Nothing unusual about that, except this payment was for injuries sustained in one of the most extraordinary UFO encounters on record.
In my eyes, a payment is tantamount to admission.
Is this evidence that this man's incredible story of a UFO encounter is true?
This was an incident that the American authorities said never happened.
An event in which a man claims to have come within touching distance of a UFO.
(1980), Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England. An event was about to happen that would change the lives of everyone involved.
Rendlesham Forest is one of the most notorious UFO incidents.
In 1980, at the height of the Cold War, bright lights were seen in Rendlesham Forest.
Right by what was then the high-security RAF Bentwater base.
At the time, it was housing various Air Force squadrons from the United States.
Two US servicemen, John Burroughs and Jim Penniston, headed into the forest to investigate.
Penniston claims that they saw a glowing, seemingly metallic object that then disappeared out of the trees.
John Burroughs claims to come within touching distance of this object.
The next morning, an investigation squad found a strange triangular mark in the forest, possibly caused by this object.
But the story was denied by the authorities.
The police claimed that these strange triangular marks in the ground were rabbit scratchings.
The light was passed off as the nearby Orford Ness lighthouse.
The men were ridiculed, their mental health was questioned.
But was there a cover-up to undermine their credibility and hide the truth?
The file was officially closed.
Yet this notorious incident had a very human cost.
John Burroughs, who up until then had had a clean bill of health, started to feel ill with symptoms that were consistent with radiation exposure.
In 2011, his health problems reached a life-threatening climax when the mitral valve in his heart failed.
And the surgeon who operated on him had no idea as to what could have caused this condition.
These are not just psychological issues, these are tangible physical effects, supposedly related to a UAP encounter.
We actually have two individuals that actually came up close and personal to an alleged vehicle that had landed temporarily on the forest floor and suffered biological consequences. The vernacular got zapped.
John Burroughs was convinced that Rendlesham was the root cause of his serious physical decline.
However, when he and his doctor tried to access his medical records, the door slammed shut.
Just 3 days after the Rendlesham Forest incident, 5,000 miles away, on the 29th of December 1980, sons are driving near Houston, East Texas.
Betty Cash and Vicki Landrum report seeing an enormous diamond-shaped vehicle being escorted by a fleet of Chinook helicopters.
The object is claimed to have been intensely bright and made of a dull, metallic silver.
Small blue lights ringed the center and flames periodically shot out from the base, creating a kind of cone effect.
The heat from the object was strong enough to make the metal on their car too hot to handle, and when Landrum touched the dashboard, she claimed that her hand sunk into the softened vinyl.
The next day, Cash and Landrum were suffering from nausea, diarrhea, generalized weakness, a burning sensation around their eyes, and they felt as if they were suffering from severe sunburn.
One of the witnesses, Betty Cash, also claims to have been treated for cancer after being exposed to the radioactive UFO.
In 1986, despite a lawsuit for $20 million, a U.S. District Court judge dismissed the lawsuit.
The judge noting that the US military had made it absolutely clear that they did not have a diamond-shaped craft in their possession.
Both Betty Cash and Vicki Landrum went on to live for several more years after their supposed close encounter, albeit with health defects, including breast cancer and severe cataracts. For John Burroughs, however, after years of skepticism over his claims of illness caused by a close encounter, there's finally a breakthrough.
In 2006, after a Freedom of Information request, the British Ministry of Defence declassifies a report which confirms high levels of radiation at Rendlesham.
But there's more.
The report states that several observers were probably exposed to unidentified aerial phenomena radiation.
Armed with this information, John hires a lawyer who takes on the case.
And in 2016, the US military gives Burroughs a medical payout.
The US government seems to have acknowledged that the Rendlesham incident did happen.
And whatever was in the forest that night had caused the radiation that led to Burroughs' ill health.
Remember, this is a guy who's been ridiculed and his credibility has been questioned for years as he's suffered with these health issues.
But now he was being given some kind of validation.
And it only took 36 years.
Perhaps any such record would open a can of worms. RAF Bentwaters at Rendlesham during the Cold War was home to a secret stash of nuclear weapons in 25 fortified bunkers. Could these have been the source of the radiation?
Is this alleged UAP causing the radiation, or is this alleged UAP visiting the site because there's already radiation there?
Interesting note about Rendlesham Forest. And there were 3 cast imprints done in plaster by some of the officers there, in essence, to collect evidence. What most people don't know is that one of those plaster casts still exists. And embedded in that plaster cast that I've had the personal privilege to actually hold in my hand are some of the pine needles that were on the forest floor at the time that may have been compressed by some sort of landing gear. Some of those pine needles are still radioactive.
Recently released documents from the US government certainly suggest that there could have been a link between UAPs and injuries caused by radiation.
The Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program was a very secretive US Department of Defense assignment that ran from 2007 to 2012.
In 2022, a report from that program, written in 2010, was released under the Freedom of Information Act.
The report includes 42 cases from medical files and 300 unpublished cases, detailing human injuries resulting from encounters with so-called anomalous vehicles, that includes UFOs.
In some of the cases, people showed burns or other injuries consistent with exposure to electromagnetic radiation.
It also noted cases of brain damage, nerve damage, heart palpitations, and headaches.
The US government is interested in the radioactivity produced by UAPs. And it seems UAPs are interested in human capacity to produce radioactive materials.
There is a much more comprehensive, I believe, understanding of the nature of the interest of UAPs in our nuclear technology. Let's not forget, it's not just our weapon systems, it's our propulsion systems, it's our way of producing energy as well. A strong link to UAPs and the development of our nuclear technology. The question is, what is it?
A sinister shape appears over an American city.
What is that? It's not clear how it got into the air in the first place, and it's certainly not clear how it's staying there.